Hi guys, welcome back to Econ Time with SK. So grab your notebooks, your favorite cup of coffee, and let's get started. So in this lecture, I'm going to focus on monopoly. Our main focus on monopoly, of course, is going to be first, we're actually, of course, going to look at the features of the monopoly because that will affect our analysis. After that, we are going to, of course, look at what the demand curve looks like, what the marginal revenue curve looks like, because remember, we need MR in order to do MR is equals to MC, right? To figure out profit maximizing. And then we're going to look at chooses profit maximizing quantity and price. So remember that in perfect competition, because the firms were selling identical goods and there were numerous sellers, that's why they had to be price takers. But the monopolist is actually a price maker. They have control over the price that they set. But keep in mind that because when we're saying they have control over the price that they set, it's not like they can set any price they feel like or the highest price they can manage. All right. Well, the price that they set is still going to depend on market demand, right? The consumers still do have a say. So if they charge something extremely high, they may find that consumers are not willing to buy any quantity of the good that they produce at that extremely high price. So that's what we are going to get into. And of course, some other key topics that we're going to be covering when we are dealing with a monopoly is we are going to look at perfect competition versus monopoly. Which one is better for social welfare? So, we've done total welfare, we've linked it to consumer surplus and producer surplus and debt-weight loss. So, we're going to do that analysis. And another key analysis or key discussion we're going to have is the discussion about price discrimination. So, starting off, quickly going over the feature of the monopoly. There's only one firm, which means they have no competition. They're producing only one good. There are no close substitutes. And new firms cannot enter, which means there are very high barriers to entry and exit as well. It is quite difficult for the firm to just wrap up and leave. Not as simple as the chai dukan we were discussing. So it's hard to give an example of a monopoly, of a pure monopoly, but think of a firm like Amazon, right? So what do we mean by strict barriers to entry? Now, any firm that wants to, it can just enter the market and start producing like Amazon. Amazon has huge amount of investment in terms of transportation network. So Amazon actually has its own fleet of planes, its own fleet of trucks and all of that. So it can actually reduce the cost at which it makes those deliveries, right? At the same time, it's got huge warehouses. It has connections with a lot of small firms, which then go and sell on their platform. So these are barriers to entry, and this is why a new firm cannot easily just enter and start producing at the same level as Amazon, right? So these are some forms of barriers to entry. Now, because of the above feature, the firm is going to be a price maker. So by this, it means it will have power over what price to charge, because now you notice that in perfect competition, if the firm was to raise the price, consumers would just run away because they have like so many alternatives, which are all identical from the consumer's point of view. However, when the monopolist is producing only one good, there are no plus substitutes, so the consumers have to stick to it if they want to purchase that particular good. And also the fact that new firms cannot easily enter, thus creating alternatives. All of this means that the monopolist does exercise greater market power and so exercises some power over the price that it sets. However, as I mentioned earlier in this lecture, they just won't go and set any price they feel like. All right. So it's not like just pick a number. It will still have to depend on consumer demand, what consumers are willing to pay. Okay. So here I've actually given some examples of barriers to entry. One of them is patents. Another one is copyright laws. Okay. And it is there to encourage firms to innovate, but it is also a barrier to entry because think of the COVID vaccine. Basically, what they did was they patented the formula. Okay, and so even though other countries did have the capacity and the technology and the ability to produce COVID vaccines, they could not. And remember, that basically created the shortage in the world. That is why a lot of us could not just get hold of Pfizer or Moderna vaccine if we were located in the more developing countries. Okay. Another example of high barrier to entry is if one firm actually has control over the input. All right. So, for instance, if you think of De Beers Diamonds, they actually own all the diamond mines. Okay. So, they're actually controlling all the diamond production of the world. So, in a way, they're actually artificially restricting supply, and thus, diamonds aren't as scarce as we think they are. It's just that the price has been raised artificially because there's only one firm which is controlling the production and of this good. All right, guys, I shall see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.